Tonight we're going to concentrate on what's gone on American college campuses these past few weeks. The encampments, the riots, the demonstrations in support of Gaza. These protests have nothing to do with genuine care for Gaza or genuine care for any of the claimed issues. The events on colleges these past few weeks demonstrate the thesis of this show, that abusive cluster B dynamics that are usually seen in the home have scaled up and they're now in public at societal level. When you watch these campus clashes, you're watching cluster B abuse. When you watch the administrations back down, you're watching the battered spouse and children try to negotiate for their safety. But you're also seeing some abused people who had a hand in creating the situation that now endangers them. It's May 4th, 2024, and I'm Joshua Slocum. This is the show that talks about politics and culture through a psychological lens. Welcome to Disaffected. Most of these colleges failed a test of their character recently. There is only one way to stop cluster B abuse: hard nose and ironclad boundaries. Few colleges chose this approach, and they will pay the price. When the honeymoon period is over, the radicals are going to go back to battering them. You'll also see one of the most reliable indicators of a cluster B dynamic throughout all of this, and that is inversion and reversal. The students are in charge of the campus, and the adults are cowed. The students riot, vandalize, assault people, but the college treats the aggressors as at least quasi-victims. The students block access to schools, they take over buildings, they do all of this at the expense of innocent people, yet the colleges call these innocent people the oppressors, and so do the demonstrators. The first thing we need to do is lay out the roles that each person is playing in a cluster B production. These are general guidelines, and the players often shift roles, but generally, we've got number one, the cluster B abuser, the big narcissist, the sociopath. At home, this is usually the narcissistic parent, but at societal scale, usually today, it's young people, or the activists, the ones who are saving the world. Then you've got the targets. At home, the targets are often the children or the spouse, and at societal scale, the children are the normies, the people who don't really understand what's going on. The people who go to work, do their jobs every day. The colleges that teach, or mainstream America. Then you have the enablers, sometimes called flying monkeys. At home, the enablers often include the children themselves. They've been manipulated by the abuser to treat their siblings as the actual abusers and to take the abusive parent's side. Enablers also include people outside the home who only know the narcissist propaganda and don't see what's really going on. At societal scale, the enablers include some of the activists, the weaker ones who are just along with the ride and are doing the beck and call of the serious abusers and schemers. They also include onlookers and commentators who fall for the concocted story and make the ratchet click tighter. Every time you meet these people in the middle, you are clicking the ratchet one notch tighter, and it goes only in one direction, and there's no release on this ratchet. You can't spin it back to zero. So what happened? Well, students set up encampments on colleges across the country, ostensibly in support of Palestinians and people in Gaza. They are objecting to how Israel is prosecuting the war against Hamas. These students took over quads, they took over college entrances, they put up tent cities. They ignored, of course, the mealy-mouthed little requests by the college to vacate. Will you please let us by? No. Justice. The biggest conflicts look like they happen on the campuses of Columbia, Harvard, UCLA, and Portland State, but colleges across the country had demonstrations. And the protesters portrayed themselves as saviors for the oppressed Palestinians, and often these protesters portrayed themselves as victims of the patriarchal, colonial, oppressive colleges. They're violent institutions, as one activist said. We'll hear from her later. Many of them demanded that their schools divest themselves of all business entanglements, all investments with any business connected to Israel in any way. Make no mistake here. Their goal is not anything to do with helping the people of Gaza. Their goal is to take down capitalism. Their goal is to take down merit-based institutions and work, and to take down the constitutional freedoms of the United States. Here are some of the scenes from this week. We'll just give you a sampler. This one we're going to show you is a parent visiting the campus of UCLA, a Jewish parent, as it happens. And look what she found when she tried to go on campus.
It is 1:30 on Monday. I am at UCLA. I wanted to show the apartheid that's going on here today at UCLA. They're not letting Jewish students access Royce Hall. None of this is accessible to Jewish students, to parents. I had to go all the way around. This is Royce Hall, which is not accessible. This is the library, which you cannot get access to. There is the barricade as well. They have barricaded off this entire area. Beyond where the student and teacher walkout is, right beyond there is a ADA entrance, which is no longer accessible by students or anybody that needs it. Right beyond there is a set of stairs on the green lawn, which is only accessible to the students who have a wristband. I was told when I tried to access it. It is being guarded by people in the encampment. They're not letting any Jewish students up to access any classes. They did not let me up as a parent of a student that goes to this university. As a parent that pays taxes to a state university, they have taken it over. They have taken over this whole area. Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, inside the campus, a number of students seemed to be engaging in a conversion to Islam that looked more like a cult meeting.
Hello, everybody. It's me again. I'm here because I believe in freedom. Have you guys not? Sorry. I come from a place that never been a single Christian.
Sure.
My family is 48, and I got to go up there and sit on. The rest doesn't feel like my home, and I can't go.
I'm just waiting for all the butts to come up. When is the butt up part? We're going to get there. Don't worry. We've got the butt for you. Here we go. Butts up. You know, if I thought this were a genuine religious conversion event, I wouldn't make fun of it. I used to make fun of this stuff all the time, but if I thought it were genuine, I wouldn't make fun of it. But this looks more like a Jim Jones meeting. I mean, do I think all of these students wearing their Yasser Arafat scarves are actually genuinely converting to Islam? No, they're caught up in the emotions of a cult demonstration. But by the beginning of this week, things on the UCLA campus had gotten significantly worse, as you're going to see in this video outside the tent and plywood encampment. Students are beating each other with sticks. Some students are trying to tear down plywood walls, barriers. I love the ones with the Yasser Arafat scarf over their noses like they're protecting themselves from COVID. Oh, look, this one has a sign that says right side of history. Must be nice to have that level of confidence. Is that a smoke machine? Girl, is this a theater production? Somebody's holding up the top of a Rubbermaid bin as a shield. I'm sorry. This is the serious part of the show, but it's already gotten ridiculous. It's not clear in this who started what. The video was described online as pro-Israel students who started attacking the pro-Gaza encampment, but I can't confirm that. I don't know who started what, and I don't know whether they're properly described as pro-Israel or if they're just anti-douchebags. Who knows? But one thing is clear. When protesters do stuff like this, when they set up camps, when they block access to college facilities that other people have paid for, violence is going to break out sooner or later. It is going to happen. There's no, we're not going to have the conversation about how regrettable it is and, oh, this must never happen. It is going to happen. You know it's going to happen. These colleges know what is going to happen. They are responsible for allowing it to get to this point. Meanwhile, journalist Andy Ngo has documented some of what the protesters did at Portland State University. No surprise, of course, being Portland. Here's footage of the library with apologies for the melodramatic music that was inserted in. And the caption on this is, Antifa establishes new base of operations at Portland State University. Yeah, you can see it's not just the outside. They've trashed the inside of the building, too. Yeah, summer of love indeed. Now, here is the first example I'm going to show you of how the targets of this action, the colleges, how they are doing it wrong. By capitulating to the abusers, they are ensuring further abuse. Andy Ngo explains Portland State's stance in this tweet. He says, Portland State has announced that it is shut down on Tuesday, April 30th, because of safety reasons after far-left violent extremists associated with Antifa stormed and occupied the large main library. The PSU president allowed the encampment to grow over days, giving time for the extremists to recruit and broadcast plans to capture buildings like at Cal Poly Humboldt. Antifa are writing graffiti messages about blowing up banks and genociding their enemies at the encampment, along with writing their logos and symbols. They have members set up at posts across the campus to monitor anyone who goes nearby, especially if they have a camera. Yesterday, a cameraman was attacked from behind and beaten. Well, in New York, here was the scene at Columbia University. Students had been occupying the campus for more than a week, unmolested, and then they decided to break into Hamilton Hall and seize it. Big sign that looks like it's written in blood. Intifada. Or maybe it's Heinz Hall rather than Hamilton Hall. Yep, just smash a window, break yourself right in, let yourself in. Just walk right in. Nobody's doing a goddamn thing.
Ready? Free Palestine! Hey,
Free Palestine!
Can you wrap around that side? Please, everybody, you don't need to do this. Can we get back up behind us? Red team behind us. It's too much. Circle up and red team. Shut it down!
Columbia, of course, allowed this occupation to go on for more than a week before doing anything about it. They brought this on themselves. They played the flying monkey. They played the enabler role. Like the wife who thinks that if she just has her husband's dinner ready on time the way he wants it, then he will stop hitting her. These colleges have ignored reality until it's too late. These protesters, these demonstrators, these abusers have showed them and warned them exactly what they were going to do, and the colleges sat there and did nothing. They didn't want to call the police because that would be perceived as violence. Because half of these damned administrators are of the same thinking as these brainwashed cult students. This bit of video that I'm going to show you now, you know how I said this isn't really about Gaza. It's not about helping people who are suffering in a war-torn country. And there are people over there suffering from war. That's real. It has nothing to do with that. Their goal is something entirely different. The alleged, the putative charitable impulse is a cover for something else. This is what happened at City College of New York. Watch them take down the American flag. We will not stop nor rest till our 5 demands are met. Yeah. The point was not to raise the Palestinian flag, although they did that. The point was to take down the American flag. Because they want to take down America. That's the point. They want to take down normal. They want to take down the Constitution. They want to take down merit. A Twitter user, Laura Powell, saw this dynamic. I pulled her tweet about it. She says, one of the spokespeople for the UCLA protesters explains their end goal is for, quote, more than divestment. She says, quote, given that the University of California is founded on colonialism, it's inherently a violent institution, end quote. She argues the UC system is linked to both foreign wars and domestic police brutality and demands this be addressed. She's saying the quiet part out loud. They intend to dismantle our domestic institutions. The Palestinian cause is just a warm-up. She's right. Now, speaking of media personalities, journalist Michael Tracy is a good example of the enabler role in a cluster B system. I can't tell if he's saying what he's saying in good faith or bad faith. I can't tell if he truly believes it, but it's classic minimizing and excusing from an enabler and an outsider looking in. So you see his tweet here. It's a picture of the police standing in front of Columbia as the police finally made entry and took the building back from the students. And Michael writes, if you ever wanted to commit a crime in New York City, now's your chance. The entire police force is preoccupied in Morningside Heights, conducting an elaborate acrobatic raid to bravely apprehend Columbia students who rudely protested U.S. foreign policy in Israel. Now, we saw from the video that the students were not rudely protesting. They were breaking windows. They were breaking and entering. They were taking over buildings. They were bringing barriers inside buildings. They formed human chains to stop people from accessing the building, and they were threatening other students. I feel certain that Michael Tracy knows those facts. I know he knows them. But notice how he's done an inversion. The violent protesters, they're the victims. They're victims of the police. The police are all bad. The cops restoring order are the oppressors. Inversion and reversal. That's Cluster B. The Columbia Law Review, at least the Student Administrative Board, is also a good enabler, but they're not unwitting enablers. In fact, I'm going to put them in the category of narcissistic abuser. Look what they want the school to do. They released a statement. Columbia Law Review's Administrative Board student editors call for exam cancellation out of concern for equity and academic integrity. I'll read to you some. Quote, as the Administrative Board of Student Editors of the Columbia Law Review, we urge the law school to cancel exams and give all students passing grades for their work throughout the semester. In the alternative, it is our view that the law school, at the very least, observed the community's overwhelming call for pass-fail during this horrific time for our campus. You notice the degraded, feminized elementary school language, emotional and designed to invoke pity. In this horrific time for our campus. Then they also do an inversion of the truth. Quote, The violence we witnessed last night has irrevocably shaken many of us on the review. We know this has to be the same for the majority of our classmates. Videos have circulated of police clad in riot gear mocking and brutalizing our students. The events of last night left us unable to focus and highly emotional during this tumultuous time. The police didn't brutalize students. There's no brutalization going on. We're scared. We're too traumatized to take normal tests and get graded on them. You need to cancel classes and let us do pass-fail. And you know what? They'll probably get their way. The phrase to remember in these situations, it's not my phrase, but it's really apt. The issue is never the issue. When you're dealing with somebody who's engaging in cluster B behavior, narcissistic abuse, their claimed issue and concern is almost never their actual issue or concern. That is a cover for another motivation. Always remember that. You cannot take these people at face value. There were other colleges that cooperated in their own continuing destruction, and they helped ensure that this kind of behavior will happen again. They're doing the institutional version of the battered spouse who fawns before violence and then tries to negotiate their way out of it. Here's Rutgers University. Dear Rutgers, New Brunswick community, due to anticipated escalation of protest activities and out of an abundance of caution, I have to cut in here, an anticipated escalation of protest activities? An abundance of caution? No, an abundance of cowardice and irresponsibility. An anticipated escalation? Well, then why don't you anticipate calling the police and putting it down before it escalates? What is wrong with everyone? Back to their statement. Out of an abundance of caution for the safety of our students, exams and other academic activities scheduled to take place before noon today on the College Avenue campus have been postponed. More details will follow. Please contact your dean for further information. Blah, 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 blah. Well, no surprise here. Let's go to the University of Minnesota. They had this to say. University leaders and student organizers reached an initial agreement to end the encampment on Northrop Mall and a commitment to not organize disruptions at upcoming final exams and commencements. All previously closed buildings along Northrop Mall will reopen at noon today. An initial agreement, huh? Why the hell are you negotiating with these assholes in the first place? They secured a commitment to not organize disruptions. Oh, that's so nice. Did you serve tea and cookies too? Yeah, this'll all work. This behavior just clicked the ratchet. One more click, one more notch to the other side. They know that this behavior works. This is the inversion of normal, with angry, screaming kids bossing cowering adults around. The people who actually run the university are frightened of their charges. Portland State did the same, naturally. They announced the vandalized library was closed due to an ongoing incident. Why was it ongoing? Because they won't call the cops. They did worse, though. They collaborated in the lie, and they placated the protesters. So here they say, following the largely peaceful protest in the park blocks on Monday afternoon and evening, a group of protesters entered the library, which was closed. Following the largely peaceful protest. There was no reason at all to say that. That's a version of what I talked about last week, the SOP, where you give in to the other side unnecessarily. You lead with your chin and placate them when that actually only undercuts your own position. There's no reason to say that except to signal, please don't kill me or hurt me. They just upped their chances of having more buildings vandalized and perhaps more injury to people by doing that. Now, we do have some examples of doing it the right way. I'm happy to share with you. At first, though, I saw this tweet from a user named Eric Hartman. He's absolutely right. Eric Hartman, not Cartman. Let me read it to you. Eric says, it really feels like our national empathy has been weaponized against us. Most of the things that are currently going wrong in our society are a direct result of millions of normal people being afraid to say no. He's right. Being afraid to say no. I tried every tactic I could to make my abusive mother stop hurting me. I listened. I let her vent to me. I ran at her beck and call in response to the dozens of texts she would send me every day, even during work days. Then I tried to negotiate. Would you please be willing not to text me when I'm at work unless it's an emergency? Would you please keep a list and give it to me on the weekends when I have time to deal with it? Will you please stop spying on my other tenants? Would you please stop rifling through my tenants' mail and then reading the contents of their mail to me? Would you please let me get a doctor's appointment for you to help you deal with your depression? Nothing worked. It only provoked more abuse, more accusations that I was the one being abusive, that I hated her, and that I was hurting her. Was doing no such thing. All while she abused me and my interests. You know what worked? Saying no. One day, it happened in one day, a switch flipped. I changed tactics completely. I stopped answering all communications. My only response was either no, just the word no, or I will ignore all future communications like this, and then I responded to nothing else in that email chain. And I printed it out, and I filed it, and I took it to court. Because then I said no with a lawsuit in eviction court. And it took months, and throughout that time, I refused all communication with my mother. I responded to nothing. I would not look at her in court. No contact had already begun, and that is how I won. Let's see how saying no can work at a societal scale. Here's the belated police response once UCLA had finally had enough. Here they are clearing the encampment.
Pressure, no pressure, back. Okay?
Back up.
Just look at that filthy mess they've made out of the closet.
It doesn't matter.
Look at this.
So you guys see,
that's your utopia.
all but
That's your socialist utopia.
And in the encampment, squeezing everybody out of one exit, and anybody that's not going to comply will be arrested en masse. Oh, windows are breaking.
Pigs. Not the cops, the students.
Yeah, they just broke some windows.
You love to see
I'll
it.
show you the continuation of the police line. So it's been a complete L squeeze. They just breached that side as well. So they have breached all three entrances from here, the main entrance, the right entrance, and over here as well. So it is a complete breach of the encampment. Everything you're seeing over here is now completely taken over by the police. You're about to see a lot of arrests go on right here. They're being basically cornered in this area because they're not willing to cooperate.
And here's my favorite. A group of frat bros who had enough of the anti-American bullshit at their college. They pushed through the pro-Palestine crowd, took down that foreign flag from the school's flagpole, and raised the stars and stripes. They even took care to make sure that it didn't hit the ground. These are the kinds of boys that I once feared and hated. My, how the worm turns. You can tell who's on which side by who's wearing COVID face masks. Boy, that split the lefties. This whole thing has split the lefties. They don't know what to do. Yes, they've raised the flag and now they're singing the national anthem. I do wish they'd pick a key, but that feels churlish to say.
And the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air.
We need to say no. We need a masculine response to this societal insanity. A firm, unbending response that is impervious to crocodile tears. Yes, I said firm and unbending. There are no other options for dealing with cluster B abuse. There is no middle ground. There is no third way. People can take that to heart, or they can keep trying to learn this truth the hard way. We're going to return to the college protesters in the third block of the show, and we're going to do some mockery. But after the break, we're going to have a conversation that you're not going to hear in a lot of other places. We're going to talk to Joseph Chambra, a writer and a former Catholic who sees a strong connection between child abuse and homosexuality. I see the connection too, and so does most of the literature historically, until it became forbidden to see it and say it. So tune in for a conversation that is too hot for anyone else to handle after the break. Do you get something from Disaffected you don't find anywhere else? Well, you can help produce the show. Supporting members get access to our private Discord chat server, meetups, and audio episode recording sessions with guests. Sign up at disaffectedpod.substack.com or at subscribestar.com/disaffected. Welcome back. I want to have a conversation that I don't think you're going to find in many other places because it is a forbidden conversation. We are joined by Joseph Chambra, who is a writer, a podcaster, a blogger, a Catholic. And I noticed Joseph's work a few years ago. This will be the first time we've spoken to each other, but he sees a connection between childhood treatment and specifically childhood abuse and the eventual outcome of homosexuality, which is a topic that I'm interested in. And I think a lot of you are, although it is, again, forbidden. Joseph, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Joshua. Let me say ex-Catholic.
Ex-Catholic, thank you. You may have to correct me on several things since I don't know you well yet, so let me know anything I get wrong.
Okay.
Let's start where we usually start. Could you give us a little bit of your background, who you are as a person personally and professionally,
Sure.
that
Sure.
and how that segue into how you became interested in looking at this question?
Sure. I was born and raised here in San Francisco, California. I was born in 1969, so during the flower power generation. And then I came out in 1988, which was a pretty bad year to come out. That was the height of the AIDS crisis. And then, I lived out and proud here in LA for throughout the 1990s. And then I had a conversion experience in 1999 and went back to the Roman Catholic Church, although I had been abused as a boy in the church by a priest, and then stayed within the church for about 20 years, not by any design or will on my own. I did become kind of an advocate for survivors, and also, strangely enough, for those who experience same-sex attraction and are Catholic. So I tried to advocate for those people.
Okay. So what, and actually, we'll hold off on that. What got you interested in looking at the connection between childhood maltreatment, and I know that I've read several of your blog posts, and I know that you see a strong connection between childhood sexual abuse and homosexuality. I see that too, but I think I also see some connection between non-sexual child abuse and distorted forms of sexuality, whether or not one wants to call homosexuality that as well. What got you interested in taking this issue on? Because it is such a hot button issue.
Yeah. Well, during the 90s, I wish I could have said that I picked up on this, but I didn't. And I think when you're in the gay community, sometimes there's a bit of trauma bonding that takes place. You know, all of us, especially gay men, tend to share similar stories about, bullying and neglect, I think, when we were children. So there's that sort of camaraderie that exists. And I remember at that time hearing a lot of memories from my friends about their first sexual experiences, which often took place when they were minors, but with adult men. And because that had happened to me as well, and a lot of other people that I knew, it didn't seem strange. It didn't seem odd. It was sort of normal. Later, when you could say I left the gay community, I was also dealing with issues of, I would say, mental illness and addiction. So I did start seeing. I was seeing those issues persisted also when I was gay and out. And I saw a mental health professional before when I was gay. But my life wanted to take a different route at that time, wanted to go in a different direction. So I changed psychiatrists, and I wanted to explore maybe why I was gay, because I was kind of questioning that, why that happened. And, this was still in the wake of the AIDS crisis, and I'd lost so many friends, and I was just thinking about that on a deeper level, what actually happened. And one of the things that my psychiatrist brought to my attention was the fact that I'd been molested as a child. And the fact that he even framed it that way kind of surprised me, because it had always been, I had always sort of perceived it when I was gay within the lens of sort of my first experience or a coming out or something like that. I didn't really think of it as molestation, which sounds
How
kind
old
of sick.
were you?
When I first had sex, 11.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but that wasn't unusual. I knew a lot of guys that had happened to. And I started looking at a lot of different studies. And what I noticed is that there was people will say that there was a preponderance of the evidence that showed that gay men, the majority of them, had been molested by men as children. So correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, but to me that was a big red light there. And the other thing that I started looking at is that there's a problem of mental illness in the LGBT community in general.
Yes, there is. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So some of this stuff that they can that the activists, I say, can deny, especially the studies that show a high rate of CSA, or childhood sexual abuse or assault. But the mental illness stuff, they really can't. So the way that they have explained it away is through, how do they say it? It's through minority stress.
You anticipate me. Yes.
Okay.
Good.
That LGBT people have these high rates of mental illness because of minority stress. The difficulty with that is that white upper middle class males tend to have the highest suicide rates.
Yeah. Let me explain for the audience what the minority stress model is. This is really important. Okay. I have it in my notes here, and you really just, I'm glad we're on the same page. Actually, first, Kevin, let's show just those two graphics. I just want to show the audience some of the bibliography that Joseph has on his site. It's a very long list of literature beginning around 1970. I know you can't read it on your screen. You can see it on his website. But a really long collection of articles showing the correlation between childhood sexual abuse and maltreatment and a homosexual outcome in adulthood. And what some people may not know is that prior to our modern era, this was not seen as controversial. It wasn't hidden knowledge. It wasn't. It certainly wasn't forbidden. But now it is forbidden to even acknowledge this. So the minority stress model that Joseph is talking about, almost all activist LGBTQ plus whatever, they all rely exclusively on this model. And the minority stress model says the reason why there is more mental illness, addiction, and self-harm among gay people, or queer people as they call it, is because they're treated badly. It's the effects of societal discrimination. I used to believe that. I no longer believe that that is the primary driver, because I have noticed that a lot of the problems, a lot of the mental illness that eventually comes out, these problems began for the children before they came out and said, I'm homosexual, I'm gay. And Joseph, I'd like to know your anecdotal experience here. Let me tell you what mine has been. This show, a lot of this show is based on some realizations that I made and then talked about with Kevin. I have a mother with borderline and narcissistic personality disorders, and I had a violent stepfather. So what I have noticed over the years is an extremely strong correlation between adult male homosexuals and an enmeshed borderline type mother, or either a domineering and controlling or a far too involved and enmeshed mother, and a father figure who is either absent, weak, or violent. And the correlation is so strong that when I look back over my life, over all the gay men that I've known, I can only think of a few, and I know a few now. So this is the not all, but I can only think of a few for whom that family pattern does not hold. What have you found?
I agree. If there wasn't, because a lot of men will say, well, I had a bad relationship with my father and I'm not gay. That's true. And not all gay men were sexually abused as children. Yep. That's true. Right. But you got to remember that homosexuality affects a pretty narrow group of people. I mean, they want to say it's 10%. It's probably more like 4%. So the human mind is complicated, and every person's brain is unique. So every person is going to respond to trauma in a different way. Yeah. Most men with a bad father or a dysfunctional family is going to respond differently than homosexuality. A lot of times they'll either have addictive personalities, alcoholism, pornography, just bad relationships with other women, but there's a small group that will respond and they'll swerve towards homosexuality. But I think sometimes there's a perfect storm where you'll have a abusive, neglectful, or absent father, but like you described, then you'll have a overly involved mother a lot of times too, which can do it. But then you can also have what I've seen, because I've seen this in straight guys that have had this same family or upbringing, but what can be a saving grace sometimes is the presence of a good father figure. You'll see some of these guys like are good in sports or get involved in sports, and they'll have a coach, or at least they'll have the peer influence of other men that can kind of offset the dysfunctional family. But what you see with a lot of gay men sometimes is that alienation or lack of affirmation from male peers and stuff. So
I experienced that. Did you?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yep. Now,
Yes,
we're
very
going to
much
have, audience, I want to tell you about this, and I'll remind you at the end of this segment, but we're going to have a longer, hour-long conversation with Joseph this coming Thursday. May 9th at 7 p.m. We're going to record the session there, and that'll be open to our members to sit in on the recording. So this conversation is sort of just an introduction, but there's one other question I want to hit with you today, Joseph. Coming at it from the other side, from the people who, might object to people like you, people like me pointing out this correlation. If we say, for example, we'll just posit that a large majority of homosexuals come from a traumatized background, traumatic issues with their mother and with their father. But we all know some gay people for whom that is not the case, right? There's no apparent abuse in their home. So how do we explain? And again, these are hypotheses, right? We're not saying for sure this is causative, although I think there is some causative to it. But what do we say about those gay men who say, hey, I had a fine upbringing. I love my mom and dad. We don't have any issues. Where do we look in that case? Okay.
Well, let me say here, I did outreach in San Francisco for about 10 years. So I talked to a lot of LGBT people, sort of beyond when I was gay, as more informed. And I had people approach me, and when we talked, and say, well, I had a perfectly normal childhood. Again, these people are coming from a community with other people with normal childhoods. And you talk to them for a little bit, and it's like, this is dysfunctional. So in their mindset, they're saying that their upbringing, there was no trauma, but there's a lot of underlying trauma, and trauma doesn't necessarily mean physical abuse. It can be psychological or mental abuse. I've seen it, but also what I noticed too that is different from my generation. It might be indicative in yours, but there's also an early exposure to pornography, which can warp people's minds as well. So,
yeah, this is important, and we're going to when we have more time, I'm going to bring these questions back up. I'm really glad to talk to you, Joseph, because I'm going to leave this actually. This is going to be the teaser to get people to tune in there. I'm not going to ask you to flesh out right now. You've said several times when I was gay. So there's a conversation to be had about how you see yourself afterwards, and we're going to save that for the longer audio. But okay. I'm really glad to talk to another man who's had an experience like me, whether you consider yourself gay or not. I still call myself a gay man, even though I'm celibate. Mm-hmm. I have a couple of friends, close gay male friends that I can talk with this about, but it's hard to have this conversation. And I'm not saying that I or anyone necessarily has the answer. I suspect that, as with most traits in humans, there are genetic and biological and environmental contributors. Almost all things have at least those two streams that are influencing them. But provisionally, subject to, being disproven, I do suspect personally that there is a causative influence from child abuse on homosexuality. Not in every case, but I do suspect it's there. Mm-hmm. And, I was not sexually abused as a child. I was physically abused. I was beaten. The psychological torture was constant and in my view, far, far more damaging for far longer than the actual physical violence was. And I've seen this in other places too. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I wasn't abused," but what they mean is, my mom and dad didn't beat me. They didn't hit me with a belt. But if mom and dad are screaming, if they're lying, if they're trying to convince you as a child that you're crazy, and that you're making stories up when they're actually the dishonest one, these are all psychological abuse. And I have, like you, I've seen this instance where I saw an article a few years ago. Here's a good example. Online, the headline was something very close to the special, unique relationship between gay men and their mothers. And this article was a cheerleading article about how the wonderful and unique closeness that gay sons had with their mothers that was not seen in straight men. And they had a number of gay men who and moms who waxed lyrical about each other and how they were best friends. And Joseph, as I was reading that, I know that everybody was writing it in a happy tone of voice. And I said, I'm not reading a special, unique, close relationship. I'm reading a borderline mother who is enmeshed with her son. And I think that a lot of what we gay men particularly, but some people looking in from the outside think is a wonderful special relationship, may actually have some trauma roots.
Yeah, it does. And also in the life of a boy, I think a father is integral. And I think an absent or preoccupied, and what I mean by preoccupied is just a father that's not there, or just a neglectful father can be abusive. And I think a lot of women, and I don't want to blame them completely, because I think men, specifically fathers, have stepped back a lot, and I think women have tried to fill that void, and I think it's caused a lot of problems, especially in the life of young boys. I think it's been damaging. So
I agree.
I mean, part and parcel of my discussion that I've had in my writing and in my podcasting about homosexuality has also been the role of fathers and fatherlessness, because I think that's essentially been the cause of it. So
great. Good. We're going to delve into more of those when we record our episode on Thursday. Let's a little housekeeping. Where can people find you online? Twitter or your website or wherever you do most of your talking?
josephchambra.com, and then I'm on Twitter, and I'm also on Facebook.
And spell your last name for people.
Sure, it's SCIAM as in Mary, BRA.
josephchambra.com. And as a reminder, great. As a reminder to everybody, this is a great time to become a supporting member. If you want to join our conversation and our recording this coming Thursday, May 9th, yes, it's 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern. It's going to happen in our Discord server for members. Sign up at disaffectedpod.substack.com or at subscribestar.com/disaffected, and all paying subscribers will get an email telling you how to jump into our server. Joseph, thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you again in more depth this coming Thursday.
Thank you.
Take care. We'll come back after the break.
You too.
Do you get something from Disaffected you don't find anywhere else? Well, you can help produce the show. Supporting members get access to our private Discord chat server, meetups, and audio episode recording sessions with guests. Sign up at disaffectedpod.substack.com or at subscribestar.com/disaffected. It's time for Purportedly du Moquerie. Are you ready? Allons-y. First up is my new line of adult children's toys, BPD Bratz dolls, Bratz with a Z, Z if you're British. Explore the wonder of your very own Manic Pixie Borderline. Each BPD Bratz doll comes with borderline glasses, poison danger hair, alcohol difficulties, and cutesy sayings like flirty, crazy, what's not to love? Comorbid personality disorders, sold separately. Now, what? Kevin's talking in my ear. No, there's nothing else included. Yeah, no, you don't get a free Borderline. You have to pay extra for that. This is a business, not a charity. All right, let's go to Vermont here. Vermont is investing in our youth with a renewed emphasis on vocational tech. So let's drop in on State Treasurer Mike Pisak as he talks to a youth. And Mike said, what does he say here? It's critical to create opportunities for young people to thrive, recognizing that college may not be the best fit for everyone. Now, the lower caption on that, I'm sorry, I did a bad job of the graphic. It got cut off, so I'll read it out to you. And then I was like, $25 to run your register? Pfft, bitch, I don't get out of bed for less than $10,000 a day. Shows. Get that boy to beauty school so he can get to the dropping out part and join a musical theater troupe. In keeping with this week's theme, let's meet two lovely ladies who are packing on the pounds for Palestine. Here we go. They're wearing t-shirts that say, Fatties for Palestine. And yes, I anticipate you, audience. I cannot verify the sex of at least one of these fatties because they're so obese that all of their secondary sex characteristics have been obliterated. The person who actually posted this on social media asked for a caption, and I offered transporter accident. Enterprise, what we got back didn't live long. Now, believe it or not, the queers are still losing their minds. Yes, they have even more mind left to lose, surprisingly. Someone has hallucinated another update to the pride flag. Take a look at this. So we've got the penetrating arrow that is now encircled by a thing, and there's an umbrella. It looks like one of those Fisher-Price teething rings with the interlocking primary colors. Yes, like this. I mean, and, you know, Kevin pointed this out. The infantilization of this political set in this generation is impossible to miss. Everything is made babyish and childish for adults, and everything that children are occupied with is being perverted and made adult. I mean, it's that inversion. But the infantilization is so obvious. Now, let's go back to some of our student protesters and give them the respect they deserve, which is none. Ladies and gentlemen, meet 35-year-old Columbia PhD student and lecturer, Joanna King Slutsky. Yes, sorry.
First of all, we're saying that they're obligated to provide food to students who pay for a meal plan here.
But you mentioned that there was a request that food and water be brought in, unless I misunderstood.
To allow it to be brought in. I mean, well, I guess it's ultimately a question of what kind of community and obligation Columbia feels it has to its students. Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill, even if they disagree with you?
Yes,
if the answer is no, then you should allow basic, I mean, it's crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like, could people please have a glass of water?
But they did put themselves in that very deliberately, in that situation and in that position. So it seems like you're sort of saying, we want to be revolutionaries, we want to take over this building. Now would you please bring us food and water?
Nobody's asking them to bring anything. We're asking them to not violently stop us from bringing in basic humanitarian aid.
Humanitarian aid? Bitch, please. If they don't let Uber Eats come in, they're going to die of dehydration in the middle of Manhattan. This is how disconnected from reality these cosplay revolutionaries are. And incidentally, I also don't like her because she looks like my mother as a young woman. So if anyone has Miss King Slutsky's address, please let me know in the comments. I'd like to send her a brochure for Mrs. Slocum's finishing school for unstable women. Now, take a look behind her shoulder. You see her friend there, that guy there? With the eyebrows? There was a little sit down with him. If we can please go to that.
As a Jewish student on campus who represents a group of dozens of Jewish individuals, I would like to note that Jewish students have been part of the protest movement on campus since October, and there have been dozens of Jewish students who have been arrested for pro-Palestine demonstrations. So I think it's really important to recognize that there is a large anti-Zionist Jewish voice on campus, and it's also important to recognize the difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism is a political ideology, while anti-Semitism is in regards to Judaism, which is a culture and a religion, and it's important to know the distinction between the two. He's doing the voice.
He's doing the voice. as Jewish individuals, students, since October. This is the linguistic uniform I'm always talking about. Notice how this political set, this generation, has adopted non-standard pronunciations for words, like all of a sudden overnight. They're starting to talk in a way, a pronunciation, frankly, that before their generation marked somebody as poor, uneducated white trash. There's no other way to say it. That is what that accent and pronunciation did. And now it's part of being elite. Also, Kevin, can we go to that still from him next? Is this the right number of teeth? I mean, I didn't count. Something's going on there. I mean, I know, what would I know? I mean, I've had so many teeth yanked and I got 2 fake ones screwed into my jaw, so he'll have to count for me, but uncanny valley there between the teeth and the eyebrows. All right. We're going to go back to Slutsky and friends. With all these press conferences, it's a wonder they have time for their tantrums. Again, as you hear this, listen to the vocabulary in the voice.
Yeah, I think it's more than divestment as well. I think given the fact that the University of California is founded on colonialism, it's inherently a violent institution. There needs to be an addressment of U.S. imperialism and its ties to the UC system and how it perpetuates war and violence abroad. Not only abroad, but also here, locally. We see this with the brutality, the police brutality that black and brown students face here at UCLA, Arab students, Muslim students, Palestinian students. And I myself have personally been faced those violences that the UC has perpetuated. And
faced those violences?
It's not just a means of divestment, it's a divestment from Zionism. Yeah.
Okay, apparently I was wrong. That was not, I guess that's not Miss Slutsky. It's just her body double, because this, I guess, is UCLA and not Columbia. So UCLA is a violent institution. Quote, there needs to be an addressment. There is not a word called an addressment. This is the intellectual caliber of students at some of our top universities in the country. An addressment. That's what a stupid person says when she wants to sound smart. Oh my God. This also is from one of our top universities in the country. Let's play it.
My name is Mo Debath, and I'm a gay Palestinian American. Both of my parents are born and raised in Gaza. We have tons of family that's still there. We haven't been able to reach a lot of that family in over a week now. As of November 4th, 2023, we have lost 42 family members that we know of. People that we'll never ever get to see again, build relationships with, build memories with. I want to be able to do that with those that are still there. I want to be able to help those that are still there. I want to help liberate those that are still there. It's important for me to be here today as a queer person because the liberation of my people is queer liberation. You can't have one without the other. The same systems that go against us will go against Palestinian people. And if you care about liberation as a whole, you should be here today.
What's your response to people who say that you're not safe in Palestine as a queer person?
First and foremost, I would go to Palestine in a heartbeat. I have no fear. I love my people love me. And I want to be there and be a part of the movement that ends up leading to queer liberation for liberated Palestinian people. If you feel that such violence exists for queer people in the Middle East, what are you doing to change that for that community? The first step is the liberation of Palestine.
If you feel that violence is happening in Palestine, if you feel... No, it's not if you feel. It does... Oh, my God. The liberation of my people is queer liberation. Yeah, they'll liberate your pansy ass right off the rooftop. You know, it's too bad about the voice because he's beautiful. The stupidity I can handle, but the voice is a deal breaker. And what is with that fake microphone? What is he doing? Kevin thought this was some kind of joke when I brought this this video into the show. He thought it was some kind of comedy routine. It's not. He's literally just holding a fake microphone. I mean, at least when I did that as a kid, I had the good sense to use an Avon hairbrush. For God's sake, get up the props budget. All right. Finally, tonight, finally. We need to talk about WNBA basketball player Brittany Griner. You may recall her from being locked up in a Russian prison because she brought marijuana over there and they didn't like that. And then Joe Biden moved heaven and earth in a prisoner exchange to get her home because she was so important to our collective patrimony or something. Here are some things you may not actually know about Brittany Griner, who you're seeing on our screen shirtless right now. And I didn't say topless because topless is for women. Brittany Griner is 6'9" tall. If you know anything about the statistical distribution of heights among humans, there are, and my friend Holly actually worked this out for me, statistically, there are potentially only 25 women in the entire world of that height. So it's possible, but it's vanishingly rare. She also appears to have no breasts, and I don't mean small breasts. I mean, it appears that she has no breast tissue at all. She appears to have a male-shaped skeleton. Now, try noticing any of these things on social media. You'll get huffy, offended blowback about how mean and cruel you are and how unreasonable it is to ask the question, is she actually a man? And there's nothing weird about noticing it. There's nothing weird about suspecting it. There's nothing misogynistic about noticing it and saying it either. And no, it has nothing to do with abusing masculine women by calling them men, as several angry dykes have spluttered at me on social media this week. She look like a man, and everyone knows it. Every single person suspects either that she is a man or that she has a very rare disorder of sexual development. Yes, every single person on earth sees this and suspects it just like I do. That's how far crazy we've gone over all about this gender stuff. People are claiming that it's bizarre and rude to notice and describe the very thing everyone can see right in front of them. So I'm going to take you out with a recent CNN interview with Brittany, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this without losing it. I was in tears and hiccups last night watching this, and every time I watch it through, it gets funnier. Hearing is believing.
That you let down yourself, your family, your teams. Yeah. So how did you work through that, what you called this guilt that you were feeling?
I don't think I really gotten through all the way that I didn't let down, everybody in my family, and it was just. I think I'm still trying to get through that part. Everybody says give yourself grace. It's so hard for me to do that. At the end of the day, it's my fault, and I let everybody down.
Let me just end it.
Yeah. It's just, I didn't think I could get through what I needed to get through.
Stop. There's enough. It's enough. Stop. That's the show. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.